All right, so I wanted to start in on some features and start breaking some of those down. So I'm going to start with eyes. And I'm going to start with just a straight on simple eye. This is very standard. And um, I'm going to put an eyebrow over it. And you're looking directly on at this eye. And now that I've got it roughed in, I'm just going to go ahead and tighten it up a little bit. I'm not drawing anything very tightly in this DVD because it's really not the point. But what I want to get across here is, and I do this with everything. I'm putting in some line weights around the top of the eye, and then keeping the bottom of the bottom eyelid much lighter, because uh, line weights can really add a lot of dimension to your artwork and make everything that you draw have a bit of weight to it and have a dimensionality that it doesn't have without it. So now I'm drawing an eye that you're looking down on. Again, the approach is the same. I'm blocking it in, getting in the eyebrow, and you'll notice the eyebrow is much lower against the eye than it was on the previous shot, and the eye itself, actually, the shape has changed. The top lid is flat, and the bottom lid is much more rounded, and the reason for that is because the eye is actually a sphere, and the lids are folds of flesh that are over that sphere. So when you turn it, um, they take on a different shape. And to help describe that shape, the shape, especially the relationship between the eye itself and the eyebrow, something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and you see it in artwork a lot, is the eyebrow. If you're looking down at a face, it'll look the same against the eyes if you're looking up at a face, and in an actual face, that's not true at all. And in a skull, the eyebrow actually rides along just above the top of the eye socket. So drawing these skull shapes, I'm actually drawing the eye socket, and you can see where the eye sits in the socket from the side, and you'll see that for the side view there that I've just drawn, the eyebrow would actually sit forward against the eye a little bit. And now in this shot that I'm drawing, it's the same shot actually as what I drew a moment ago with the actual eye drawn in. And you can see the eye, because of the angle, the brow is actually very low over the eye, and that's why the eyebrow is also much lower against the eye. Now looking up at the eye, obviously the effect is the exact opposite. So I think it's very actually helpful to learn how to use this skull shape um, for the eyes, for some other features too, but especially the eyes. I found it was very helpful for me to learn. So you can see the eyes sit very differently in those sockets as a result, and the eyebrows would ride along the top of the sockets again. And here I'm going to draw the way that I would draw the eye in that socket, and the eyebrow is much more raised, and the shape of the eyebrow is actually very different too, because it rides along the top of that shape. So I'm hoping that drawing that skull shape there really makes that point clear, and I think it does. Again, just putting in some line weights, um, put a little bit of shadow into my eyebrow, um, and all this just again to give things a little weight on the page. You can see above the eye, the upper lid actually has a double line to it, and that's because I did that because you're looking up at it. So I want to accentuate the fact that um, you can see the ridge of the lid. So here's the other eye, which just sits in the other socket, and the same rules apply. It's the eye itself is actually the opposite of the eye that you're looking down on, in the sense that the upper lid is very rounded and the bottom lid is very flat. And I think knowing the way that the skull works and the way that the eye sits in the skull, it makes eyes very, very easy to draw. And this is an eye from the side that I'm drawing right now, and it has a different shape, obviously, than an eye from the front. Uh, And I think it's very important to know that it, because the actual socket recesses in the skull, the eye recesses in the skull too. The eye doesn't sit right up against the nose. I'm going to go ahead and illustrate that. This is a common problem that I see. People come with samples to shows, and I see this mistake in artwork a lot. I'm sure every editor or art director everywhere sees this mistake a lot from artisans. It's a very simple thing to avoid. I'm drawing the eye right up against the nose, and you can plainly see that it looks wrong. I think that a lot of artists can see that the face doesn't quite look right, but they don't really understand why that is. And the reason for that, I'll draw right now. And here's the eye recessed because it's actually within the socket. And that gives that effect. It's pushed into the socket. And it makes it a world of difference. I kind of want to go ahead and just actually draw the sphere that is the eye. That's something I was talking about a minute ago, and draw the lid over the sphere just so you can see how it wraps around a sphere. It's, I think everybody knows this, that the eye doesn't just sit, as this oval shape in an eyelid. It's an actual sphere that goes all the way around. But I think it's a very helpful thing to keep in mind when you're drawing an eye, to bear that in mind, that you're drawing a whole sphere, because I think it makes it much easier to get the eyelid to actually look correct around the eye. If you're having trouble from an odd angle getting the eye shape to look right, I would give that a try. Just draw an entire sphere, and then think about which way you want the face to be pointed, and draw the eyelid on top of the sphere from that angle. And it really helps. You can see I'm drawing an eye that you're looking up at a bit of a 3/4 angle, and so that's where I'm drawing the lid. It's a very, very simple way to get a much more accurate shape to your eye. All right, so next I wanted to go ahead and start drawing some women's eyes, which are exactly the same as a man's eye, except that they have a bit of mascara on them, basically. I'm going to draw a couple examples just to get that point across. I think that I hear a lot from people that say that they really have a lot of trouble drawing women's eyes. And I want to get it across as much as I possibly can that there is absolutely no difference between the two. It's just in the way that you draw in the eyelashes. So here you're looking down at an eye. This is something we did just a minute ago. Everything is exactly the same. The relationship between the eye and the brow is the same. And I'm just going to put in a little bit of eyelash that I wouldn't put in a man's eye, and that makes all the difference. I mean, there can be other differences with a finished face. With a man's eye, I'm more likely to put in a few wrinkles, maybe some detailing that I wouldn't put into a woman's eye, and that stands true with every part of a woman's body compared to a man's body. I'm always going to detail muscles a little more clearly, and put a little harsher shadow maybe, and put some veins in, a lot of things that I would never do with a woman's body. It doesn't read well. Everything that you do with a woman should always be much softer and cleaner and more fluid. And as long as you keep that in mind, I think it makes it very easy to separate the two. So again, this is looking up at an eye. The eyebrow is the same as a man's eye, and it's raised up against the eye a little bit more because you're looking up at it. The upper lid is rounded more because you're looking up at the eye. The lower lid's flat, and here I'm just going to put in my eyelashes. And because I'm drawing for comic books, I like to keep, and I would recommend almost no matter what you're drawing for. I think that drawing in the eyelashes as a solid shape is much more effective than drawing in individual lashes. Same holds true for drawing hair. If you're drawing every single strand of hair, it can start to look very distracting and maybe a little spaghetti like. You need to learn how to draw a hair as like a volumetric clump. I'm going to go into that in more detail later on, but right now I'm actually drawing in the eyeball into the eye. Something I should talk about a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and do it in some of the men's eyes too. I have been doing this long enough that I kind of have a bit of a shorthand, and I don't know that that's necessarily such a bad thing, because I can't imagine that people looking at a comic book ever think to themselves, this guy is drawing his eyes the same way every single time. Um, I always draw a a little circle for a light spot in the corner of um, my eye, and then I draw the little dark area